Yeah.
Okay, welcome. Good to see you all. It's been a little bit of time, and I think we're good to go. I did want to. So we have an agenda tonight. The agenda is really just the minutes, and then looking at a quick update on the Climate Hub, which if Dana isn't here, Mimi and I'll do, and then a quick look at the climate element that was presented to the council, city council, that's going to have a public hearing next week or the week after. And I thought it might be, I would just should quickly go through that because I think we might have some a chance to put our oar in the water on that. And the last thing is to say, what do we want to do with the Climate Action Committee? What is its, as we move forward, or not move forward? Yeah.
And one more thing to the agenda.
Yep.
On November 24th, the council, the committee of the whole, it's actually a special meeting, but it's sort of a committee of the whole meeting. We'll discuss the qualifications for the potential climate manager position.
What day did you say?
It's November 24th. So yeah, the appreciation for this committee would be if we get a recommendation of what you guys think should be the qualifications.
Okay, we did put something in the climate action plan.
Right.
So.
But if you have further thoughts.
Yep, okay.
I get, or will we be, is that on the agenda? Will we
Is
be
it on
talking
the,
about- Yeah, will we be talking about that more, or if I have a question about that, should I bring it up now?
bring it up right now.
I request
Okay.
the-
Yeah, I was gonna say, you don't mind maybe like circling that around, just what we had put in the climate plan, and then we could all, like maybe on a Google Doc, and then we could all just kind of weigh in on it.
Okay,
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
okay. Are you gonna do that or I'll do that?
That would be great, because I'm not sure which
Okay.
version I have.
I'm gonna put a little star by
Okay.
it. I'm gonna do it. We're gonna ask you to give, okay, is there any problem with the agenda? Any issues around it? Okay, we're gonna. 5:37. We're gonna have a 5-minute update on the climate. I'm trying to,
Right now, starting now?
right now, starting now.
Okay, update on the climate hub. We are moving along. We've got interest in supporting financial support from multiple different places at this point along. Biggest part of that is the 20,000 that's coming in from King County. And we are putting together a board so that it's more than just the three of us, who Mimi and Sarah and I have been making all the decisions, and it's getting very tiring. So we would like to have other people join us. But also, yeah, so we're looking for other voices. And we are still working hard with our group to put together digital something for the climate hub, which is a little bit amorphous right now, but we'd love to get feedback on that, or voices on that as well. But we've got 2 young, very good computer scientists that are helping us to build a pretty exciting interface for people to explore data and activities that are going on in the local area that are related to climate change. And I know there was some other stuff I was supposed to talk about, and I can't remember what. We would like to put out something about getting a board together. We need to do a couple things. It's with the climate hub itself, the physical climate hub. We need some sense of how we're going to choose content to put up on the board on a 3-month basis. So we've written a overview statement for, and we actually have an application online for people to fill out if they are interested in putting content up on the board. And I think for the first round or 2, we're probably going to invite people, or strongly to submit work to the board. But then we also need others to contribute to this. And we need a section of the board that's just climate action committee. So it has climate related things related to the town that are maybe more our content, particular content of interest from the public. So that's all we need.
Okay. Yes,
2 questions for Dana.
Okay.
First one is, what's the 501(c)(3)'s name?
LFP Climate Hub.
Okay, and second question, so just not to be too self-referential, but on the part that's the CAC, do you want to basically mention the fact that you got $20,000 to basically spend on the video of display and all this stuff
Mention that where?
on the board itself?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good idea. I think we need like a calendar, events site and news site, things that are locally important. Yeah, that's a great idea.
It was something like a little seed money to get the rest of the money kind of flowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what people say. So there's something about leveraging grant money to get more.
Yep.
Not quite sure how you do that. So that's another thing that the board, I think, would like to get a financially savvy person on it to deal with all that money stuff that we have to do. I'm not very good at that. But those
okay.
are good questions.
Are there other questions? Well, we'll be, yeah, I think there's also a we probably should do a newsletter from the climate. Hub,
Yeah, that's a
so
great idea,
people
but
are
then
all
we
on
need
that.
somebody to write the news.
Yeah. So the other thing is, you know, in the usual and orderly process of things, there would be a policy document that said what the climate element was, a policy document, and then we would follow that and do an action plan. We did that backwards here in Lake Forest Park because of urgency, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not the usual and ordinary way. But the three of Anne and Mimi and I were on the policy group that was the citizens group that was looking at the policy framework for the climate action, for the climate element of the comprehensive plan. They hired Cascadia consulting firm, which helped us with ours to also do this, to help shape it. The recommendations from this group were brought to the planning commission. Planning commission did a little tiny bit of changing, and then they brought it to the council. And I wanted to show you what the council, I thought I wanted to show you what the council, I want to share something. This, I want to share with you the council presentation. And what they're doing. These are the Cascadia people talking about it, and
When was that?
this was a week ago. Why can't they hear this?
Yeah, yes. On the screens is. Oh.
They're talking.
You've shared there, but I just want to say thank you all so much for having us. We're really pleased to be here tonight.
I have to mute. Oh. I'm muted.
What other computer is on? The one.
Okay, now I'm gonna stop. Okay. What is going on?
I think you all start with.
I'm on mute. I'm on mute here.
I think you have to turn your volume off on one of them.
Okay, I love that you all tell me what to do, but I don't.
Okay.
We're good?
Okay, we're good, right?
Now they're muted too.
Now the screen has to be unmuted under the red bar. No, not there, under the red bar of the where it's. Yeah,
Over there.
over there, there. Try that.
Cool.
There, it's not supposed to be muted, is she?
But picking up the room
Yeah.
noise.
Okay, well, I'm gonna talk through it. Okay, so they, one of the things they did was they looked at all of the policy documents that the city had. They looked at the audit policies, the climate impact policies, they looked at a variety of other places. To sort of examine what we had, what policies, whoops. Were in place. Maybe this is a bad idea. Maybe you should look at it at home. Let's stop. I can't.
So frustrating.
It's so frustrating. Yeah. Okay, I'm done with this. Okay,
Yeah, stop sharing, just reshare.
reshare.
Yeah.
Have a
Yeah, just
The
stop.
little green arrows,
share.
click the little green arrow at the bottom of
Yeah.
the center.
Aren't I doing? I'm doing it on mine.
Oh, that's weird.
Stop share.
Oh,
Got it.
that must be your page.
There you go, okay,
Okay.
now try it again. No, it's still picked the wrong thing.
Okay, I'm done. I'm done.
No.
So what they were, you can help me, Tracy. What the notion was, there were 4 elements that were sort of problematic that they talked about in the city of Lake Forest Park, and it was heat, water, fire, and something else.
I got them.
Okay,
It's basically smoke and heat, environmental justice, drought and flood, emergency management.
those were our areas of vulnerability And then-
For resilience.
for resilience, and there were 2 kind of categories. There was resilience, and then there was
Emissions reduction.
Emissions reduction, and there were strategies for emissions reductions. All of those were required by the Department of Commerce.
Yeah.
So we're trying to move in that direction. When it was brought to the city council, I mean, to the planning commission, they made a few changes, but apparently very few. And if you go to the city's website on this date, you can see the back and forth. They have a red line and a super red line, I don't know. So that demonstrates where the changes are. But I would say generally it's a document that we could stand behind, and that reflects that if they create this as a policy document and we have the climate action plan underneath it, that it gives us a way of both the city using it as a policy framework to get grants, and it also allows the action to be taken.
Right.
Okay. So, when is this coming in front of, do you remember, Tracy, when it comes in front of the,
November 20th,
okay, so that it's a public hearing.
right,
And one of the things we wanted to do,
What's the date of that again?
November 20th, Thursday.
20.
and one of the things that was interesting was they had 30 people from Interact Club come and had a presentation, talk to them about it, and that was sort of their best outreach piece.
When was that?
When they were at Cascadia, when they were looking at kind of issues. So I think we need to get back to them and the Interact Club and encourage them to come back and maybe talk now.
What is this group?
No, it's a junior Rotary.
At Shark.
That's short first.
20 of them came?
30. They went to them.
Also,
Oh.
also to the environmental club as well.
Yeah. So it was nice to
How
have
does it spell?
INTERACT.
ACT,
Yeah.
interact.
Interact, yeah. Yeah, they're okay. Anyway, I think it's an important piece, but I think I'm not gonna show you this, you have to go look at it yourself, but I will add it to the email where, how you find it, it said. Where and, where it is and where it is in the tape. And you can put it on speed, so they talk very fast and it's quite quickly to go through.
So with this Interact Club thing coming to the you're thinking they should come to the council meeting on the 20th?
Yeah,
And but this isn't what Sandy's involved in.
No,
That's
no,
the environmental club.
right, her brother is the leader of the Interact Club. And
She's not an environmental club though. She's
I mean,
climate.
I'm sorry, her brother is the Interact Club. She set up a new club called the
Right.
Climate Action Club.
And then there's also an environmental
And
club. So we could get all three of those.
Yeah,
And they would come to the meeting. We
Yeah.
could go to them. So
Right.
can we get Sandy on that?
Yeah.
And do we also
The 13th.
talk at that or?
You're invited to, they'll make a present, typically they make a presentation.
Oh, it's just the, yeah.
Are we having an emergency? That's all I want to know.
No.
Okay.
So just to make the dates clear, again, sorry for the somewhat confusion. Thursday, the 13th, that is say next week, is the climate element public hearing. And then Thursday, November 20th is the climate element approval meeting. It's another special meeting. It would normally be business and finance, but we made a special meeting so we can actually approve stuff.
Say that again, it's the
The
13th and then the
13th
20th?
Yeah, 13th is the hearing, 20th is the council action.
Will the hearing typically be continued?
We mean continued.
So is the public hearing also on the 20th?
No, it's just on the 13th.
And so it's the hearing then that we should get the.
Yeah.
Students for. Okay.
And is there a role for us? Is there any reason to think that this isn't gonna pass or?
I mean, can't really know, but it's always good to hear basically not just the negative comments about parts people don't like. It's also good to hear about the strong parts of it and why basically this is a good thing. So I think it's good to basically say whatever's on your mind.
And the students, if 30 students came? how
Yeah,
do
they won't come. 2 or 3 might come.
Oh, so we're not gonna try to get big group like before.
We'll invite them, but.
And they would just stand up and speak individually.
Right, sort of like Heather's class did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, what I'd really like to talk about today is sort of the future of the Climate Action Committee. I looked at we were put in place, it turns out we didn't have terms as far as I could tell. But our job was to create a climate action plan. And job done. Job done. And what we did last year when we presented it, our work plan was to say we wanted to do some outreach to sort of juice that climate action plan. So I'd like to put that on the table. And first of all, I'd like to ask the question, sort of, who are the people who have come and gone on our committee?
Jessica.
Jessica,
Yeah,
Jessica,
and her kid.
yeah, Anna,
Right.
Yeah,
And the one that went up to Western.
Bella.
Ella, right.
Bella. Is there anybody else who's?
Yeah,
I mean,
struggling with names, so I can see their face, I just can't remember.
Tamara's got her hand up.
Oh, Tamara, go ahead. Oh.
I'll go one more down, Tim.
Oh. Linda Holman.
Oh, she's still on the.
She's still on the
Yeah,
committee.
but she hasn't attended for a long time.
And Matt is also on the committee, but not here today.
Okay, I think I made it, so you can unmute yourself tomorrow.
Oh, yes. Got it. Thank you. Yeah, no, you already said the person that I was gonna say.
Okay, well, we've been together for, since 2022. So that's a long time. And what do you remember from that?
I think it's been 5 minutes.
Nothing but good times, right? But,
Remember the icebreakers where we had to think fast, but what was good.
Okay.
I remember a wonderful little progression of, being completely driver lists and direction lists, and then picking little pieces from other climate action plans and kind of pushing things together, and then realizing we had a climate action plan already.
That was, yeah, that was the funny part, right? Oh, yeah,
Good times.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, do any of that, remember reading any action plan in particular?
I thought Shorelines was pretty good.
Yeah,
I think the thing I noticed was it Kenmore or Bothell? I think it was Kenmore, is that just was sort of, I found it very cookie cutter, and it was just kind of like cut and paste, you know, what would be cool to put in this section, without really thinking about how it was really built towards the city. So
mhm,
that was one thing that really kind of guided us to saying, well, we gotta make this much more signatures to like city of Lake Forest Park.
mhm.
I remember thinking that we could find data and then learning that we could not.
Yes.
How hard it is to find data, yeah.
Data, it was a concept.
It still is.
And then when the consultant was brought on, it's like, huh, the only data that you're going to collect is not actually on our list.
Yeah.
And I don't know whatever happened with the traffic study
Which traffic study?
for the climate element of the comp plan.
Oh, it's in there.
It's in there,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
but it's a complex plan about trips in and
And-
trips out.
Yeah, and I think they felt that they had the same problem that we did with it, which is to say this, that trips in, trips out thing where it's really hard to determine how many through trips there are and how you count the carbon for that, right? You know, yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, the methodology just really isn't there, is what I discovered.
That was why that was not on our list.
Yeah.
It's like, because, you know, when we talked about those, early on, when we had discussions about kind of, the you know, how do you draw your line around what you're trying to evaluate? When you have through highways, it's very difficult to incorporate that element, that component, and the data for that could be very confused.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
I'm glad we learned that that was a correct assumption.
Yes.
And airplane travel is the same.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think they should
airplane
just take airplane travel out and say, we have an airplane travel problem, but it's
It's not up to the city.
not, yeah, we're not gonna
Yeah,
fix it.
it's nothing the city can control, and it's kind of an exogenous thing, you know, and the societal impacts are, you know, the societal push are greater than anything. And when you don't have air traffic controllers, you don't have air.
Our air's gonna be pretty good for a while now.
Nobody-
Yeah, yeah. Don't make travel plans.
So Anne, if you wanted to, what data would you want to look at? Or based on what you found and what was hard, what could we?
Still go back to some of the basic things, like the number of home heating oil tanks. You know, the size and the frequency of,
Versus
we
the
should
electricity,
be able to
yeah.
get that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We should be able to get total electricity consumption in our footprint.
Right.
Total natural gas consumption. You know, if we know the home heating oil vendors, then we should be able to get a good handle on total oil consumption. We would be able to, document the number of solar panel. You know, total solar panels, kilowatt equivalent.
Yep.
We could
I got
document.
pretty far
our heat-
actually counting routes
Yes.
from Google Maps.
I've got.
I got pretty far, I think I was about at least a third of the way through the city.
I think I've got through most of the city. I think I've got a starting list. It's not bad.
Yeah.
And, you know, by putting our time together and checking it every 5 years or so, we.
I was just gonna say, because the Google Maps is probably 5 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you just, you know, check it on a regular basis, but, home heat pumps.
Mm.
You know, home heating with heat pumps. One thing that is, as far as I can tell, it's not actually documented. When we converted our house from an underground storage tank with oil heat to home heat pumps, even though our heat pumps are permitted, it doesn't really show up. Even if you look at our property assessment and all, it still shows as being forced air heating oil. So there are a lot of things of that nature that are not, and
Excellent.
you know, figuring that out on a more regional basis would be helpful, but in the city of Lake Forest Park, we should have some documentation, because those, you know, it takes decent wiring expertise to get the. You do want that inspected. You want the wiring for your home heat pumps inspected. And so I believe that, I mean, we certainly had ours inspected, so there should be a permit trail on us.
Would that be at the city? Or that would be
Yeah,
it?
that would be an electrical permit from the city.
So this data I think is really interesting, and I think that if we could put just this stuff together, we could put this as a part of our digital climate hub and have a section on LFP energy
emissions
slash whatever
reductions.
emissions
Mhm.
use.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
We
great
can-
and
idea.
if we could have over time,
We can get vehicles registered in the city.
oh yeah, vehicles.
That's the vehicle registration type of vehicle is available to us, so we can state how many, you know, in this year, there were X number of EVs, in this year, there were Y number of EVs.
So why did we have trouble getting that before, or did we?
We can get the vehicle stuff,
Yeah.
everything else was complex.
Everything's.
It's almost like we wanna hire someone to do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just saying, right?
Yeah.
So that might be something you put as like a qualification or a potential duty of, right? You know?
Yeah, exactly, we need that.
Realistically, if I call DMV and say, hi, I'm a citizen of Lake Forest Park and I'm just curious, give me all this data about the city of Lake Forest Park, they may or may not get around to it. But if a person calls as a representative of the city collecting data, they will get the answer. Same with Seattle City Light. Please give us the electrical usage during these periods for our city. Seattle City Light will more likely respond to the climate manager of the city of Lake Forest Park than random citizen who may or may not even be their subscriber.
I mean, one of the qualifications, not to put too many ideas in your head, might be worked with major utilities.
Okay, I'm gonna move on. Are there other activities that you kind of, things that we did over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I
Laura?
mean, I would say like the community outreach we did at the farmers markets and at the picnics in the park and all of the different community events we were at and providing educational resources like information about rebates. And partnering with other cities, you know, in the region too, the other initiatives that we did with them.
And a survey.
Mhm.
Survey was an accomplishment, wasn't it?
Yeah, all the responses that we got exceed our expectations.
Yep.
And jumping on what Tamara said, at the farmer's market, we always had that one poster that had how concerned you are about the climate. And did you notice the shift? Oh my goodness, you know, because it was, you know, most people were concerned, but not at this end, right? They were like middle or maybe this middle, right? But by this time, right, this past summer, there was like one way over here and a ton over here, so.
And on which side?
On the
Markets.
extremely concerned.
Yeah.
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 So I think basically there's been some effect on the outreach, and I think, you know, the more you know, the more horrified you are.
Well, and the more people tie individual unique experiences in their own life to weight, it is part of this larger issue. You know, we had that really horrible smoke period and then things were fine for a while. Then last winter we had the bomb cyclone and things were not fine. I mean, we were really, really lucky it was not a cold period when that hit.
Yeah.
That could have been really
Yeah.
dangerous for some of our community.
Yeah, I just
Like
like to,
also the book club too.
Oh,
The
Book club, yeah.
the book club. Yes. We had a list and like there are 20 books, right?
Oh, did you get it? I didn't number them.
Oh.
It's in that email.
It's a lot
I
of
was
them.
working on that first one, it was depressing.
They were all different. Yeah,
Did you happen to send that list to Jean?
I did.
You did have.
So what else? Were there other, let me shift to accomplishments, and one of them might be the book club. What else did we accomplish?
I think that continued presence at all these city events.
Yeah.
Is an accomplishment in itself.
Yeah, no, I think a continuing conversation, as Tamara was saying, you know, having that continuous outreach and conversation that got more people thinking about, wait a minute, what is going on and how might I be able to engage with this? And I think that needs to continue. I really think that a whole lot of our potential success is continuously being in a position to remind people, you can get this rebate. Here are these opportunities. Here's how this can affect your carbon footprint.
Mhm. Yeah, and I would also, now that I have 2 kids in, shoreline schools, I reached out to Sandy. I'd love to see how we could partner with the schools as well and have more of a presence there.
Not sure we could put this in accomplishment for the climate action committee, but. I think our influence to get the city to adopt the carbon. What was the thing we had to adopt to the initiative to. Carbon footprints or. Adopt the carbon, what was it?
Was it city operations?
It was just a recognition that the city adopted the,
K4C,
Oh,
not
right.
the K4C.
was it a state legislation? Was it
Yes, it was.
three syllables?
It was
Sounds
the
like,
state- No, it was the Washington State.
Yeah.
Oh,
was
the
it
CETA goals?
The climate commitment?
The climate
Commitment
commitment.
Act.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
Mhm.
Yeah, we did endorse that, position on the proposition, right?
Yeah. And also the climate manager role.
Yeah,
And on the most simple level, I mean, just pointing out that the city could convert its power tools to electric-based power tools. And it's like, oh, yeah, that would be easy,
mhm.
and it was done.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know that, oh.
Yeah, Jeff Johnson did that.
Yeah, Jeff just looked at it and went, oh, okay,
So all of the power tools?
All the new power.
all the
tools,
new power tools are electric.
Yeah, we didn't throw out the old ones, yeah.
So as
As
a
they were
tool
used.
gets to the end of its useful life, it's replaced using an electric.
And is that the same for cars and stuff too? Is
No,
there an agenda
We're
for
working on that.
The difficulty is, especially with police vehicles, is there's not a really good electric alternative yet.
For
Yeah,
the
'cause-
car itself?
yeah, 'cause,
or
uh,
for-
Yeah, you don't wanna treat your personal private family car like you do a police vehicle for sure, so.
Well, there are some vehicles that will be converted sooner because they are just used by city personnel to do
Right.
day-to-day activities, and quite honestly, the city of Lake Forest Park does not have a lot of miles to it. So even if you drive downtown to Seattle and back, you can do that with a relatively small battery and an EV and charge overnight and you're fine.
Yeah.
So the usage. Well, yeah, the real question is what's the usage of the vehicle? And that's a part of the swap out priority, I assume.
It is. And in fact, one of the things that was good about us starting to explore EVs was, remember that fairly large EV charger grant that the city had got, but we had to turn down because we discovered something about the electric service to this building, which is it's not sufficient for an EV chargers to the degree that we needed. So this meant that we needed to do some infrastructure work before we could even think about that.
Have we
So-
done any of the infrastructure?
We'd have to get a grant to do that, or basically figure out some way to pay for it out of the general fund, but yeah, it's a tough question, because all of a sudden we have to, I think, have a new transformer out there, right? And it starts getting expensive fairly quickly.
Well, Tamara sort of anticipates the next question all the time and was talking about what's left undone, and she said the schools, relationship with the schools. Are there other things that are left undone from our remit? The hiring is left undone.
Broadly, the implementation of the plan, right?
Which is part of the high, although that wasn't our chart.
That wasn't our charge, but yes.
True.
That is something that does need to be.
Yeah.
It is something that it's.
Mhm. Yeah. Are there other things that are left undone? We certainly, we're alluding to some data that we still didn't have, but, and that we might want to get.
Well, I guess continuing to educate, I mean, that's never done, there
Yeah.
are things that are never done,
Right.
On code.
ongoing.
We're gonna have an electric car show or
Oh,
something.
yeah.
Yes, that
That's
never
right.
happened. But Matt was interested in maybe as a council member in move this item.
Oh, that.
if of course he's elected. So. So my question is, what do we need to do now, with the, Climate Action Committee? I'm gonna sort of lay out what I think is on the spectrum. One is we just say, we're done. Thank you very much, and we go to the council and we say, thank you, we're done this and we're done. The other alternative is to say, we're gonna suspend us until there's a new climate manager, and then ask the climate manager if they want an advisory committee and if they want us. The other is to sort of say, well, we're gonna take on outreach again and spend the next year lobbying on outreach. So what are your thoughts?
Kind of like door number 2,
Suspension?
and then wait until the climate action plan or,
When
might have
is
some-
that gonna be?
That is what going to be.
Hiring,
Oh, well, ideally, as early next year as we can, right?
how
Because,
much of a suspension? You only get like a month and a half.
right,
We haven't been that bad.
yeah, and I think the person basically really needs a couple of months to kind of
Yeah.
figure out what they're doing, so, yeah. But, your point's well taken, this, Sarah. I like the idea of a suspension. I like the idea that especially if we can offload some of the outreach activities, which is what we're concerned about continuing, to maybe the climate hub.
Yeah, so can we maybe make that more official and have, oh, well, I guess it wouldn't be for the city. But what we need for doing that are people that join the hub.
No. You certainly know a group of people you can ask.
So anybody else want to put their oar in the water on this?
Well, I'm gonna be the devil's advocate on this,
Please.
just, I think it's worth examining the position of simply stopping the committee. And one advantage of doing that is to model the good behavior of a committee that's achieved its goal, then stops.
Mhm.
And if a new committee is useful to supporting the climate manager and new visions. A new committee is authorized by the council for a work plan, and there's a defined scope of work and activities that are to be accomplished. I actually kind of like starting with hey, we're gonna create a climate action plan, and then, okay, we've got that, and now we have to see through the climate element of the comp plan. And we've kind of done that. And I think there's value in stopping and then reconstituting under whatever the new mandate is, whatever the new goal is. I don't think it's harmful to have a clean slate. And in some ways, one of the things that does is it encourages new voices to come in. So I'm just devil's advocating it. I don't think there's any harm in doing that. And I think it models good behavior of, we did it. Yay, take the win. And then let's come back and regroup when there's the next thing to do.
Yeah, and if there was a new a climate manager, and they wanted to meet with us, we could clearly meet with them, and we could meet wherever we wanted, whenever we wanted, because it wouldn't be an official meeting. Yancy wouldn't have to come.
Yeah.
I'll never come and break you up.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that then, like, number 3 that you suggested was to continue lobbying on,
Well, we can continue to do that as individuals.
yeah, is that gonna happen?
So
I mean,
the original, we had a group called People for Climate Action
that's right.
that was meeting. Without anybody's blessing. 3 citizens in the country get together and they just do stuff. And, one of the neat things about this committee is that it took on a lot of the energy of that. I mean, what we saw is that group of people who met engaged in many ways throughout the community in a very constructive way. And that's almost embedded in a lot of our community now, which is really cool. But the concept of people getting together and meeting on topics of their interest. I almost think that there's value in doing that same sort of thing again of having, the Lake Forest Park Climate Action Club without any formal city
Mhm.
engagement.
Right.
Getting together, meeting broadly and starting up a new civic discussion in the library. Because a lot of the people who came
Like,
together just, yeah.
Yeah, in the,
Not at the
right,
library.
Yeah, okay, at the climate hub, at the climate hub, but the value of that is that the voices that came together simply out of a shared interest. Then have pursued that interest and have gotten much more engaged in a lot of activities. And I think doing that on a regular basis, we have a lot of new residents in Wake Forest Park.
yes.
In the 10 years that this project has been ongoing, 8 years really. We've got a lot of new people. And I think a lot of them would like to have an opportunity to get to know their neighbors in that kind of an informal environment.
The only, I agree with what everybody said. I could go either way, suspension or close it, but here's the one I want to just raise the flag about, and that is, we did outreach to high school students. We have a high school student. How do we shepherd this high school student? Either
The hub,
move her to the hub or move her to the tree board, or, I mean, I thought she was coming and I sent her an email, but I will certainly, what's your sense about what we do there?
I mean, kind of to your, point that you made earlier, and like being able to have like the backing of like, we are from the Lake Forest Park Climate Action Committee, I feel like gives us a little bit more, I don't know, like validity. Like if we do want to go like into the schools, I feel like instead of just being like a citizen group who's concerned about it, but being like, we are the Lake Forest Park Climate Action Committee, and being able to have, I don't know, programs or events or whatever it is we want to have in the schools, it just adds that bit of legitimacy to it. And I, was thinking I'm trying to schedule some time to meet with Sandy. I spoke to her about like, it could be really cool if some of the, people from the high school group could go to the middle school, or the middle school could go to the elementary school and kind of like teach what they learn. And I don't know, I just feel like there's a lot of opportunity for us to partner within the schools, and being able to organize under the Lake Forest Park Climate Action Committee gives us, I don't know, might make it a little bit easier for us to do that.
good point.
Oh, the Climate Hub is 503C, right? Right.
Mhm.
It's official nonprofit, so it's always a good way of tagging that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Same way the stewardship sometimes
Stewardship
goes into
Foundation, yeah,
school and,
so the stewardship
Yeah.
foundation, well.
yeah.
Yeah, good point.
Mhm.
What I've been frantically researching here is how we decommission, but we don't have a process and.
It says, I looked at it, it says you can dissolve anytime.
Oh, okay, well, and no council approved.
Yeah, the council has to approve it. I mean,
Okay.
I think I would go to the council and say, this is our recommendation, right? I don't, well, we're not meeting anymore. How do you feel about that?
They gotta call us back and.
Yeah, yeah,
Demand. we
yeah,
start doing-
yeah,
And move our meetings to the Volpine.
yeah.
Join us there whenever you're ready.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's not dissolving, that's dissolution.
That's what I think I looked at when I saw it.
But we could all just quit.
Oh, yes, well, yes, I would have to say that I do not experience, the city of Lake Forest Park begging us to keep going. I would have to say that's true.
Well, it's also value to the city of Lake Forest Park having predictable demands on its resources.
Yes.
So we've had the use of this room, the use of these services, the use of Yancey, or, it's been extremely helpful, but I think there's also value to saying, okay, let's right size.
Mhm. Okay, so what's your pleasure? What is the recommendation, to stop or to suspend, or those were both on the table? I heard.
So what about working with other cities then? Are we just gonna hold off until we have climate managers?
Or the Climate Hub can work with other cities.
I mean, remember Edmonds is doing that, without city recognition, and they have a fairly active climate committee, so. Yeah.
There are a lot of things, it's kind of ambiguous. I don't know what the right answer is. But I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think we can,
I agree. I think we can do it in any of these ways and it will be functional. I think regardless, we're talking about taking a hiatus until March. Because we would need to hire a climate manager and have that person in place for a couple of months. So, in November, we will still stay engaged through this, the presentation and the adoption of the climate action. Component, all those things happen, and then December, January, probably February are quiet months, no matter what. So, I'm open either way. And I think as long as we are predicted to the city that yes, it gets these 3 months off, we're not gonna use your resources, but we'd like to reconvene it once there's a climate manager, that would be fine. Or we could have the city, hire the climate manager, let them get their feet under them, and then have some kind of a group meeting where we say, okay, now we have a vision for how this would go forward. I'm comfortable either way.
well, my sense is we should stop. I think we're done. And it doesn't mean that the activities that aren't done are done, but I think there's another place to do them.
Yeah. I think the climate hub came out at the perfect time
Yeah.
for us to reignite a torch if we needed to. No pun intended.
I think there's a lot of value of using the climate hub as a way to bring a large group of the community together. I think one of the hangups of having a committee like this is it needs to have a finite size. And it's a relatively high entry level of commitment. And I think one of the things that was really nice about our community meetings was people could come to one and then skip 4 and then come to another one and still be informed and engaged and participating and growing. But they didn't feel bad for having missed meetings. There was no downside to their participation.
Did you get your
Say
eye
what?
operated on?
I was gonna say, yeah, I like the idea. I'm sold. Of continuing under the auspices of the climate hub. I think we can continue what we're doing, and to your point, Annie, gives us a lot more flexibility. And then we just, like you said, pause until the climate manager comes on, and then ask them what they would like.
So if we reinstitute, it would be when we have a vision of what the next step is.
Right.
And it would make sense to have a city committee to implement that next step.
Right, so we would have a separate ordinance that
Yeah.
establishes a new, and we won't call it climate action committee, we'll call it something else. We might even make it a commission if we can. And that way it gives us aura difference, which I think is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I agree with your arguments completely, so.
So I'm gonna go to the next council meeting, I guess, and make a report that says we think we're done and thank you very much, and we're gonna be annoying public citizens.
Or revert to normal.
Yes. Okay, is that, am I representing the consensus of this group? Okay,
And everybody has a landing place, right? That's the thing that I'm most concerned about.
well, we gotta talk to Sandy.
Okay.
And I will talk to Sandy. What I'm walking away with this is I'm gonna send what we found in the document. It was a job description out to everybody as a Google Doc. I'm gonna talk with Sandy. Oh, and the other thing is a party at my house on November 21st. And it would bring whoever you want. I mean, anybody you like. And it'll be a potluck, I think, but
What time?
let's see, this is, I don't know, 6:30? What's a good time for a potluck? 6:30,
Sounds good.
okay.
And what's the occasion?
The occasion is the dissolution of the Climate Action Committee. There's gonna be drinking and partying and we don't have to, and we can talk about the Climate Action Committee because we will have been dissolved and there won't be a legal problem.
Right, there's no quorum.
There's no quorum issue.
Vote on anything? I think you need to, it would be better to have a formal, yeah, resolution.
Oh, okay,
Do one of three things.
I think we came to a conclusion about one, right? We,
Right.
okay, so I put this on the table, is it the will of the Climate Action Committee that we dissolve?
Well, recommend to the council.
That we recommend, thank you, that we recommend to the council, the dissolution of the committee.
Yeah, I move that we recommend to the council that we've completed our work and we can now dissolve.
I second.
All in favor?
I, all opposed?
Tamara, are you still with us?
She said she
Yes,
was.
I am yay.
Okay.
Aye.
Good, good. Okay, and you got the 21st as a potluck, right? Okay, I'll set that out.
We'll do this.
Yes, we'll see.
Yeah, yeah, I'm going out of town the day after, but I will do my best.
Okay,
You have.
well, there's nothing else to talk about, right? I mean, is there anything else to talk about?
I mean, after that, it's, everything's at that climax.
Right, yeah. All right, well, I would like to say that I am particularly touched by having worked with you guys for 3 years. I feel like I think that the climate action plan was terrific. I think working with you guys has been, roll the lifetimes.
Is instrumental, or we, or some of us in getting the money for from the state
Yes.
to do the climate element?
Yep.
Yes, so that's on your list of.
Yeah.
Oh, we were?
Well, we got them to go to a meeting where they found there was extra money.
Good job into it.
Yeah.
About $30,000.
No, 500,000.
Oh.
It was huge.
Oh, no, that was for the climate.
That's
For
for
the
the
Climate,
element.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, our initial budget was about.
Oh, for this committee.
Yeah,
it's
yeah, the
30,000.
city, the
Yeah.
city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did we ever spend any of that?
We spent a tiny amount a couple of years ago.
And did it get taken
We
away?
got some,
Yes,
smoothing
then-
of the document.
Yeah.
We got the
Yeah.
document.
For the- Yeah,
And we got our mascot.
that's right.
That's right. Oh, we put that on
See, I've got the
there.
mascot.
But we also talked
Yeah.
about
Should
a
be number one on the-
brochure or a
Yep.
Right.
comic book or
Yeah.
something.
That's right, but it fell through because we couldn't get the artists.
Yeah,
Right?
the
that was- that was- that
The artist graduated.
was-
Yeah.
Yeah, the artists.
Okay, well, that's something that we,
Yeah.
With
Glad
climate-
that's done.
Hey, if the climate hub picks
a
that up, it
brochure.
wouldn't be a terrible thing.
So,
Okay.
I think one of the things about having a climate action plan is it drew the visibility of, hey, this whole thing is happening statewide. Oh, look, there's still money in that pot.
Mhm.
And it was part of the synergy that got the funding. I wouldn't say we were entirely responsible, but we sure didn't hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just want to say thank you to all of you. Yeah,
Mhm.
I've been here as long as many of you, and one of the things that I really appreciate was we did it in our own idiosyncratic Lake Forest Park way. I mean, no other city has done it this way, and I'm super proud of that.
Sarah, you've been an amazing leader.
Thank you.
Yes, that
Yes.
is so true.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Are we adjourning to,
Yes.
do we go straight there or do we
Yep.
go?
Yeah, if you
Go
want.
straight there.
The doors are open.
I move that we adjourn.
Adjourned.
Okay, adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.